when we think about kink and leather, we gotta admit Black people don't come to mind. And we're here to dispel some of the myths about Black, gay, and bisexual men in kink and leather. Here to talk with us about, what it means to be a part of the kink and leather community is one of the founding fathers of ONYX, which is a Black gay and bisexual leather fraternity, which boasts over 600 members across 11 chapters around the country. It's none other than the one and only Mufasa Ali.
Thank you so much. And I do want people to understand that we are a men of color organization. And so we do have Black members, Asian members, Latinx members, Middle Eastern members, those people that consider themselves men of color. And we've always been a men of color organization.
So in 1995, you are one of the founders of ONYX, which is leather. What got you involved into the leather scene?
When I was living in New York, I started to dip and dabble and see people coming down Christopher Street dressed in leather and going to certain private bars, certain private functions. And I kind of got interested in the look first, and then started to evolve into finding the scene itself. And started to experiment with things that people do in the bedroom.
Okay, so now we got two questions. One is, what was it about the look that drew you in? And then secondly, when did you recognize there was some bedroom things that you wanted to get involved with?
The look, I think I'd always been kind of more avant-garde fashion. Even growing up in church and things of that nature, with bright colors and things of that nature. But always interested in fashion, always interested in kind of the look. And I started to see the harnesses. I started to see the boots and things of that nature, and kind of got interested. And because one of my partners was like, oh, you always express yourself through, I was wearing kilts to things before it was mainstream to wear kilts to things, because I thought it was fashionable. As I started to read, because back then you could buy Drummer magazine, you could buy magazines off the newsstand.
Yeah.
They didn't particularly care unless you looked like an infant. They didn't particularly care how much, who was buying it. And so I started to read, started to explore, read Drummer magazine and Blue Boy magazine, and those things that were out there, and started to see, oh, there are things that happen in these places that I'm not privy to, because they're private places, that are stimulating, you know. But folks like to get spanked during sex, but that this is intentional.
Yeah.
That people ask for it and know what's going to happen, but that still does not diminish it, because consent is a large part of the leather community. That nothing happens without the consent. It may look like it's happening off kilter, or on the spot, on the spur of the moment, but it has been talked about and is understood, that these types of things, either by flagging, by signals, by bandana signals, or some kind of signal, or wearing your cuffs, your armbands, or your cuffs on your left means that you're a top in whatever you're going to do, and on the right, it means that you're a bottom, or looking to bottom in whatever that is. And so you can start a conversation there, or you can start an activity there, knowing what the signs are. And so starting to learn all of those types of things got me more and more interested. But I prefer and only date and play with men of color.
I'm curious. So what was your first experience with getting a spanking or giving a spanking or getting into some of that kinky stuff?
During a regular sexual, experience with somebody who I started, we were playing around and I started to spank them and they're like, more, more, more. Um, and learning, of course, later how to do it correctly, so that they come back for more, and that you don't injure the person. But there were a number of people putting my hands around someone's neck, while having a sexual encounter, and they liked it, and they didn't push my hands away, but also knowing that I'm not going to choke them out. But evidently that felt good to them. So there's got to be more to this. Um, and so it was encounters like that that started me, and people starting to, I guess, because of my persona, asking for certain things um, during sex, or moving in that direction. And that's why I say there's a lot of people who do these things, but they don't call them kink or kinky. People who like to be in handcuffs. What does that do? That just takes away their, um, you know, that takes that away from them, that sense of, they are at your beck and call, but you also have to know how to treat them well, and that type of thing. So there's a number of things that, you see on TV, or you see in movies, not 50 Shades of Grey. That's totally, totally not it at all. That is a black mark on the kink community. And there is a kink and leather community. So there's a kink community, a straight kink community that does kink in and of itself, but they're not in the leather community. Those are two distinct
And what is
communities.
kink?
Flogging or rope tying or any of those fetishes, but they don't consider themselves part of the leather community. The leather community in itself is a distinct community that came out of after World War II, when soldiers came back from the war and they missed that camaraderie. They were gay and they missed being with other men.
Really?
And they started to form motorcycle clubs so that they could go up into the mountains out in California specifically and be by themselves and have sex or do whatever they wanted to do. And so the first leather clubs were motorcycle clubs. And that's why we consider backpatch clubs now, or fraternal clubs, or leather clubs. We wear backpatches because that was part of the motorcycle, even though we don't own motorcycles. That was part of the history of how motorcycle clubs, or leather clubs, Levi leather clubs, came about. And so that community then grew, and they were starting to do fetish type of things and up in the mountains, because they were alone and by themselves and out of the eyes of community. They also developed a way, when they were in community, of flagging with bandanas. If it was in your back left pocket, you were looking to be the top in that fetish. If it was in your back right pocket, you were looking to bottom in that
And
fetish.
this is where the colored bandanas come in, correct?
Yes, the
Can
hanky
you tell
cody.
us what some of the identifiers are in case somebody's out there accidentally putting it in their left or right?
It only sparks a conversation. So if it's in your left or right pocket, don't worry about it. It only sparks a conversation. Um, I think that light blue is head, um, dark blue is copulating, um, black is heavy S&M,
Okay.
um, red is fisting. Um, and so, green is that dark hunter green is that you're looking for a daddy, or you're looking for a boy. If it's in your left back pocket, you are a daddy looking for a boy. And if it's in the other pocket, in your back right pocket, you're a boy looking for a daddy. And there's a lot. There's a whole list of them that we don't necessarily use all of them anymore because I just go up to you and have a discussion about, what we might want to do. But at larger events, it sparks
What
conversation.
is the specific connection between leather and kink fetish? Why do they often go together, and do they always have to go together?
They always do not have to go together because, as I said, there are people who participate in fetishes that are not a part of the leather community. And part of being part of the leather community becomes a brotherhood and sisterhood of people that have certain value system
Hmm.
around community, around safety, around fetish, knowing what fetish is, around being in community. And that's what it is. It's a larger community of people who take on that honor and take on those values of honor and safety and consent. It's a community that teaches you how to administer fetishes and stay safe, how to take individuals on a journey, how to do things consensually with consent. And that's the key. Yes, I can interrogate you. Yes, I can do a scene with you because a number of things are called scenes. Um, and yes, we can be coach and athlete. Um, but we can do those things intentionally um, and still experience the joy that you get out of it, or the terror, or the pain, because some people are pain pigs and they want to experience that pain, but you also want them to come
When
back
we
for
talk
more.
about this, of course, we don't generally equate Black gay men with this kind of thing.
Correct.
How does your involvement and the involvement of over 600 members dispel that myth? And how has this involvement started to dispel any myths about Black gay men into kink and leather?
I think people have always been kinky, but I think that we had been underrepresented in the leather community because it is mainly a white community,
Mm-hmm.
um, and so we don't. Our history probably only goes back to the '60s or '70s
Mm-hmm.
with Mama Vi Johnson and Jill Carter being the first kind of Black women infiltrating or in white leather clubs, looking for other people. She's like, she when she does her history, she's like, well, where are the other people? We know they're out there. And that was a lesbian couple. And then people started coming around in the '70s, and so we trace our history as Black folks in leather back to there. But also, I noticed, and when I had my first leather boy, and I started to we love to dance. And we started going to the leather conferences where they would have dances. And we would dance and just kind of go to those types of events. And we started to meet some other brothers who were into the community in Detroit. And we're like, well, a lot of the leather clubs were only in their own cities, were insular to their own cities. And so they were in Detroit, but we were in Chicago. So we started, going up to Detroit to hang out with them. And then the idea came that, well, why don't we join a club in Chicago? And so we can have the same kind of brotherhood or fraternity or those types of things. And these were three Black men, and the club they belonged to was not a Black club, but it was founded by three Black men,
Mm-hmm.
but it was open to everyone. And the guys that we met were of color. And so we came back to Chicago, and out of the like 15 clubs that were here, none of them looked like us. And I had been on some boards and things in the 90s, and it was kind of becoming the FUBU generation, for you by you, because a lot of people were on these whiteboards and they were getting burnt out, HIV boards and other boards, and they were starting to found the minority organizations, minority AIDS organizations in the 90s. Um, and none of the fundraising that was being raised by these leather organizations or clubs were going to these minority organizations. They were all going to white HIV organizations. Um, and so I'm an alpha, um, Phi Alpha member. And so have had that sense of brotherhood, and sense of fraternity. And I said, well, why don't we, you know, start a club here in Chicago? My boy said to me, why don't we start a club? Or why don't you start a club? That's what he said. And I said, but I don't know locally other Black men who are, or other men of color who are in the community. Um, and so
In
he
the leather
in the
community.
leather community. He knew two other people. He said he would introduce me to. I knew one other person. He introduced me to those two people. I asked the guy that I knew, would he be interested? We sat down at my kitchen table for a year, planning the organization in 1995, and accepted our first member in 96. And so we consider ourselves a bridge to the general white community, white leather community, to the general leather community. And we've been successful in cultivating teachers, presenters, um, contest winners, because there are leather contests. My husband would call them pageants, but there are leather contests.
And what happens in these contests?
Basically, they are judged by interview, some by fantasy, on stage, some by swimsuit competition, jockstrap competition, barware competition, and a speech, a platform speech. I run a contest called the Leather Men of Color. I went to International Mr. Leather, which is here in Chicago each year, and we didn't see a man of color come across the stage who had won a local contest. And
Wow.
so I said there had been a Mr. Ebony Leather contest that went out of existence. And I said, well, let me start the Leather Men of Color contest in 2005, which is now, that's 20 years old. So at least there'll be one. There'll be one.
What have been some of the challenges around race in the leather community? Because of course, you know, I would imagine they exist. So what
They
have been
do.
some of those
Mostly
challenges?
individual challenges of fetishization,
Yeah.
um, which happens in the general gay community as well. The
But
black
it would seem like it would be a little bit more heightened in a community like the leather community.
the leather community is a microcosm of the gay community.
Yeah.
So it exists there. Um, I think that people have asked when I've done other interviews, what has been our, what have been our impediments in being an organization? And I have to think about that for a minute. And I say, we haven't really had any
Hmm.
because we built our own table.
Yes.
We created our own barbecue. And if you, and if you, and if you, if you act right, you can get a ticket, and you can come over and play with us. But we support the general community because we are a part of it. But we have built our own sense of who we are because we need that in order for us to be a part of the more general community. And so that has fared well. We're celebrating our 30th anniversary this year here in Chicago.
First, congratulations on 30 years. That is incredible. I know it's taken a lot of hard work.
We are the longest standing people of color organization in the leather community. And our sister organization, the Onyx Pearls, they have their own chapters, and they are for all women, not just LGBTQ women, not just lesbians or bisexual women, but that's an organization for all women. But we are specifically an organization for bi and gay and bi men of color, trans included. We've always had trans men for male identified in our
How
midst.
does that work?
They're men.
But I mean, because we don't know a lot about it. So I mean, I'm gonna tell you what many people who haven't actively participated or experienced it think, and that is like you kind of just go in there. I mean, I think it's really important that you say consent happens,
Yes,
because a lot of people don't know there is consent. So,
correct.
there are a lot of people who kind of think you kind of get you go in and you get peed on and slapped around and you know
If you ask for it, yes. If you don't ask for it, if you don't ask for it, it won't happen. And that's, we tell people, to come to our bar nights. Each of the chapters has a monthly bar night. And it's just for fellowship, and to raise money, for the chapter. And people are like, am I going to get thrown against the wall when I come in? Well, did you ask for that? If you asked for that, then we can talk about that happening. But if you don't ask for it, and they're like, then they get upset that it's just a get together, and we're trying to demystify
yes.
coming to a leather bar or a place, a leather bar, or an event, because you now people can now the internet has been our saving grace, because now people can find us and go
Hmm.
to our website, onyxmen.com, and find out when our events are. And each of the chapters have websites. And so you say, oh, they're going to be at this bar the fourth Friday of every month, or they're going to be at a bar the fourth Friday from 10 p.m. to 1 a.m. So I know I can go at that time and run into the members. We take people in who have zero experience in leather and fetish play to people who have years of experience. Our membership runs from age 21 to 85, 87, I think, might be our oldest member. Um, and our associates, you can join as an associate, and an associate can be anybody of any race or gender.
Hmm.
What it is that they don't have voting rights. They can't determine where the money is going, because we donate to people of color organizations as well as leather organizations.
We have to get into another part of this too, because this is where we had these conversations at. So
Yes.
for of course the gay community is already looked at as a very over sexualized community.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that Onyx and the leather community, of course, is very sex positive.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you all navigate the balance between being, healthy and sex
Mm-hmm.
positive when we're looked at as, I would imagine, I mean, even in the gay community, people look at leather and they stigmatize it a little bit. So we know what
A lot.
anybody else does. So where do you guys find that balance at, and how would you explain it to people in a way that helps us understand this is still a healthy sexual expression?
It is, and it's starting to become. I'm part of a therapy group, also, that is starting to use BDSM and fetish play, as therapy, for people. And so we have been labeled a sex group, or people, you just join to have sex with everybody in the group, and that is far from correct. We our tenets are education, exploration, and empowerment. We want you to come in and explore yourself. I mean, when we pledge people, they have 6 pages of fetishes that are possible. What have you done? What do you like? What would you like to do? What would you like to experience? Why would you like to experience this? Our pledge process is an education process, educating people of color in leather who came before them, educating them on themselves. What do they want to experience and explore? And also empowering them to
Mm.
take the reins of consent and explore for themselves. And so we tell people that we are not a sex club, that half the time they don't believe it, but we tell them we're not a sex club. We invite them to one of our nights. They see that it's non-sexual. Um, I mean, people may be turned on by what people have on, but it's not overtly sexual. Our biggest pushback as ONYX was not from the gay white community as much as it was from the gay black community, saying that black people don't do that. It's a white thing. Yet we knew that people were doing this already in their bedroom. They just weren't naming it. And so we're here to name it and put a name on it and empower gay black men to explore it, and that it's not a dirty thing at all. It's a great thing.
What specifically about this do you think was so triggering for the Black gay community?
I think um, our conservative background, as Black people in America trying to assimilate into society and not be seen as different. And so the pushback was, that's a white thing. That's what they do. That's just such as in Africa, that gay is a white thing. Being gay is a white thing. It's not a Black thing. When you have African societies that were same gender loving tendencies within the villages. And
Yeah.
so it was pertinent that we keep moving forward and dispelling the myth that this is not just a white thing, that we are very involved in the community, that we can be leaders in the community and have been and are now leaders in the community, and that we are asked to come to Widener University to do a seminar on fetish. And we are asked to come to the Leather Leadership Conference and as ONYX and do something on Black people or men of color or people of color in leather. We are asked now to come and be an expert on these things because we've experienced it. And so that is great for us. And so we have dispelled the myth by just being in community, being at gay Black Pride celebrations, doing seminars at Black Pride celebrations, dispelling the myth that, yeah, you may be doing this already, but you just don't call it fetish or leather. And it may not be as consensual as you think, but we're just those that ask for what they want and what they want to experience and how they want to experience it. And the thing is, can I deliver that for you?
So with this conversation, becoming more a more visible one, how is the Black gay community starting to respond to you
Very
now?
open, very much more open. We have one of our bar nights here in Chicago at a Black gay bar, um, and have done demonstrations there or demos there as well. And so the community is much, much more open in requesting us to be at Black Prides, at Blacktino Oasis. Our Southeastern chapter always has a booth there, and they're asked to be there. And so at many Black events, we are now asked to participate in some way, shape, or form. And so the community has come a long way and has opened themselves up in many, many, many ways. But we want to educate people in how they can open themselves up. How can they empower themselves sexually? How can they empower themselves to experience the life that they want to experience? We also um, cook for one another. I mean, we're brothers. We also, go and check on one another, call in with one another. We have business meetings. We're planning the 30th anniversary here and expecting 300 to 400 people here in Chicago in October. And so we do things. We go support the community uh, pantries, food pantries. We do community work. We do community service. That's part of the leather community in and of
What
itself.
do you think it is that's helping you all to continue to grow?
I think there's still a need. There's still a desire. People are still doing these things in their bedroom. People are still exploring. And then again, it doesn't have to be overtly sexual
Hmm.
because a flogging isn't necessarily overtly sexual. Um, but also getting in the right mind frame that this is a flogging, this is a consensual. This was not taken out of context in our history.
Yeah.
And you have to also move your mind out of that context of slavery. This is not slavery. It is flogging excites the endorphins when done correctly. I am not there to draw blood. I am not there to harm you. I'm there to excite you. And there's a mind body experience that happens and endorphins that happen, getting hot wax dripped on you. It's also colorful. It's also an art piece, possibly, but the sensation, that sensation play, um, exploring your body, experiencing different things with your body, being willing. I mummified someone for the first time. Um, it was their first time being mummified. Um, they were reluctant. They were another brother, but they were like, this hasn't been done before. And uh, then they came back for
How do
more.
you establish the trust? I mean, did these, can you have random encounters with people?
You
How
can.
does that work? Because I mean, to just meet somebody and let them put you in handcuffs and mummify you and pee on you or something like that.
There are certain things that are there are certain things that are easier to interact with than others. When
Yes.
it's something like mummification or flogging, even, well, some people will try flogging without, but being the trust sometimes has to be instantaneous. And other things, the trust has to be built up. And the more you play with a certain individual, the more they trust you, of course. You also can get vetted by people.
Hmm.
So I'm at a party and somebody is being flogged by someone else, and they're like, well, I'd like to be flogged by you, but they've asked somebody about my skill level that they trust. And so that trust is transferred. But certain things can happen on the fly. Um, Being peed on is something that is just kind of innocuous in the community. Um, and so because again, we know that the bladder filters the toxins out of the pee before it comes out of you. So it's actually there may be a smell from what you've eaten, but it's not, the toxins are gone. And so it's the idea that we've grown up with that this is, you know, off limits and this is, oh, degrading. And this is a number of things that excite the person
Well,
about
let's
it.
talk about that because I do know that for some people, they like being degraded and humiliated, and that makes them, it turns them on. It can make some
Yes.
people orgasm. So,
Yes.
what is
Yes.
it about that particular part of sexuality that excites people?
I think it's the rigors of their life. The rigors of their life that they are in charge all of the time, or they have positions where they have to be on point, on point, on point. And this gives the power over, it's called power exchange. This gives you
Mm,
power over to someone else consensually that you trust, that is not doing it, that will hug you afterwards,
yeah.
and that will provide aftercare afterwards, or be with you afterwards, um, to bring you back to
You've
reality.
been doing this for a long time. So, of course, I have to ask, and I'm pretty sure we're all curious, are you still exploring new parts of your sexuality in this arena of kink and that sort of thing?
Of course, there's always new things that you haven't done. There's things that I gravitate to, impact play and fisting, and some other things are things that I gravitate to. Um,
Fisting.
yes,
We gotta ask what because we know it happens, and so we don't get to talk about it. What is exciting about fisting?
you can feel when you're inside a person, you can feel their heart beat through them, through their body. And there's a connection and an intimacy that is there for the top. For the bottom, there is pleasure in first being penetrated like that, preparing themselves to be penetrated like that, because everyone cannot do it. People prepare themselves. And there are, again, online groups for Black fisters, messenger groups where people connect with one another. Um, and people um, practice, they prepare themselves for this to happen. And for them to be prepared, they have to have a special diet when they're getting ready to do it, those types of things. And so for them, the pleasure is the connection and feeling the weight of the fist of the hand, because it's not really a fist, it's a hand that's going in, not a fist. But some people do like to be punched within there. But once you're in there, that can happen. But it is the connection. It is a deep, deep, intimate connection. And knowing that the sphincter will
They
come
will
back.
be able to get pleasure from a normal sized penis again.
Yes. Yes, they will. It's not, it is for that moment. And then it comes back, but they relish in their ability to do it. They relish in the connection. They relish in the opportunity to connect with someone on that type of intimate basis. And so it's very um, often done in the community. But again, one has to be prepared for it. That's not something that just can't be done off kilter.
And you would agree that even though it could be argued that more white men are into that sort of thing, there's also a bit of I guess we kind of underestimate also how many black men are interested in that too.
Yes. And finding each other has been the issue, of course. So that's why these groups exist on Messenger. That's why they exist on other platforms, so that so that we can find each other and network with one another and meet up at certain events, or say, oh, you're going to be in town, you know, do you want to connect? And those types of things. So there are, and actually, I think, looking back at it, Onyx was kind of formed as a green book for the leather, for the black leather, for the men of color leather community. So that when we went to these large events, we would have somebody to hang out with. We would
Yeah.
have somebody who kind of understands us from a cultural standpoint.
Yes.
We would have somebody who we could go to dinner with. So we could talk about, Beyonce with, that we could talk about certain things in our lives other than leather. So most of the times when we're at the bar, or when we're together, we're not talking about leather, because that's what we do and experience. We're talking about life. Did you go to that movie? Did you go to that concert? Did you, what's going on with Marvin Sapp? I mean, that's our life. I'm a church boy. Kojic grew up, bred on both sides of the family. And so many of us are ministers and church people and organists and uh, have grown up in the church or still in the church in some way, shape, or form. Know what that is. It's also very spiritual. Leather
Mm,
can be very spiritual because I'm taking you on a journey. I'm taking and allowing you as a master, as a top. I'm allowing you to release your mind. I'm in charge. Now you'd have a safe word that can stop. Ultimately you're in charge because you can stop what's going on at any point in time because you have a safe word that you can use. If it's getting uncomfortable or you are feeling you're freaking out or whatever we're doing, you can stop it. But you're allowing me the power to take you on a journey of sensation, of ecstasy, um, of connection, and then bring you back
mm,
safely. And that's what consent in fetish is about. But again, as you said, certain things can happen off the cuff. I mean, you could go into the back room of a leather bar and somebody could be sitting in a tub waiting for it to be peed on.
mm.
And there's not necessarily no trust in that, other than I gotta go, and you're laying there, and I'll go
For
here.
a person that likes to get peed on, what about that turns them on?
I think it's the 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 tabooness of it that in our culture, bathroom functions are extremely, private and taboo. Um, so it's taboo for you to drink it, taboo for it to be for you humiliated by being peed on. I think it's also a part of humiliation, but it's also a part of service
Hmm.
that some people feel that if I'm serving you, it's an honor to be your urinal.
That's a serious humiliation kink.
So I'm not feeling that I'm being humiliated. So there's two parts of it. So some people look at it as humiliation. Other people look at it as a service because we serve the community, and there are people who serve masters and doms and daddies in the community as their boys or subs, and they feel it an honor to be their master's urinal, to take in that which is intimate to from that person and that
I
individual.
imagine like in a more mixed space, it would be hard to come in and see like a white guy peeing on a black guy and spanking him.
Yes, Lord, yes.
So,
Yes,
so for people who
yes.
have reservations about that, how do you think Onyx and the conversations that you had there have helped to navigate that sort of discomfort around that scenario?
You are your own person. And so I don't particularly seen in that way. But there are people who do have partners that are white. And they may be the sub to the white partner, or the white partner may be the sub to them. I can't yuck their yum and understand their particular, as long as they are not in danger, as long as it's not an abusive relationship. I don't can't orchestrate who one loves and who
Mm.
one chooses to play with. I know who I choose to play with and who I love. And that's we say, don't yuck someone else's yum.
Okay. So for people who are interested in exploring this, how would you suggest they
Some
start?
of the homework on the internet. Start to know yourself. You have to be able to want to step out of yourself and step into um, a place of fraternity and a place of learning, um, and be open to seeing some things that you never thought you'd see before. Um, they may not be for you, but they are for someone else. And you just kind of have to, say, oh, that's not for me. But, if you love it, I love it for you. As long, again, as there's not abuse, and as long as you are not getting hurt by it, then there has to be an intervention, or there has to be, there should be an intervention. There should be um, uh, a counseling on what's going on and how it's going on, and are you safe? Because in the there have been people who who've had to been extradited from relationships
Mm,
because they were in abusive relationships, and it was kink forward, but it wasn't. It was abusive. It was not. There is some kink that is abusive and not consensual. We know that there is spousal abuse within the gay community.
absolutely.
We know that that does exist, and it could exist within the gay leather community
So
as
last
well.
question,
Sure.
Onyx is celebrating 30 years.
Yes.
You all have built this community of Black gay and bisexual men who celebrate themselves through leather and kink. Tell us a little bit about this celebration, why it's important, and for people who want to check it out, how can they check it out?
Well, one, you can check it out at onyxmen.com, our website /blackout. Blackout is our motorcycle run. Again, they would run up into the mountains. So clubs have what they call runs or anniversary weekends. And it will be in Chicago, headquartered in Evanston at the Evanston Orrington Hotel. Um, and it will be October 16th through the 20th. And we have Kink U at Onyx University. There'll be classes. Um, and again, classes are important because if you're flogging someone who's of darker skin,
Hmm.
you're not going to see the redness that happens. If you're flogging someone who's white or lighter, you see the redness. You have to understand how to feel the heat on the body, feel the endorphins rising, know when to slow down, know when to stop, know when to go further, based upon the person's body language as well as that. So we'll have parties and outings and gatherings, a gala, a dinner to celebrate, a Met Gala type dinner to celebrate our 30 years. Um, we will be also having our annual general meeting, and also having a dungeon party where people can see and explore different kinks. And so we're coming together as a family reunion. And that's how we look at it. It's a family reunion that we come together every 2 years to see one another. And a lot of times I travel across the country to different events. And so I do see the brothers in different areas and um, get to be with them. But there's other brothers that don't travel as much. And they come together and want to see and meet people that they've only seen on the internet or talk to on the internet. And it's going to be a great celebration. And it is October the 16th through the 20th in Chicago. And onyxmen.com/blackout is where you can get all the information to be with us and celebrate with us. Did we think we'd be around for 30 years? Had no idea that we are still around and growing, and learned how to spawn chapters.